So today I want to talk to you about step 5 of the Budgeting Your Best Life budget system. And step 5 is the debt tracker. Now, this is an extract of the debt tracker here in front of us. And basically what I've done is I've used some demo data. It's based on real life data actually, but it's just an example to show you how to keep a track of the debts that you've got. So I'm assuming that you've got some credit cards, and I've noted down a couple here. So I've got, for sake of argument, I've called them MBNA 1 and MBNA 2. And what this allows you to do is it gives you the opportunity to write down everything that you owe on your credit cards and your store cards. Now, there's plenty of space. Hopefully you won't need all of it, but you never know. And what the object of the exercise is to work out what your total debt is. It's to give you a wake-up call, if you like, because that's how I treated it when I did this exercise for myself. It was a wake-up call as to the amount of debt that was owed. And it also gave me the opportunity to work out a debt payoff plan, which we'll talk about a little bit later. So on this particular form, you've got, first of all, a column for the credit card balance. Then you've got a column here for the amount that you've paid in the month. Then you've got another column for interest that you've paid and a closing balance. So what this is doing is every month you'll have a sheet to fill in, and every month you'll track each credit card that you've got. So there'll be one line for each credit card that you've got. And all you're doing really is tracking the information that's shown on the credit card statement. So you're showing what your opening balance was, you're showing how much you've paid off that month, you're also showing how much interest you're paying, because that gives you an idea as to how expensive that debt actually is. And you can see here, this is two different credit cards. And interestingly, the second credit card has got £13,500 of debt on it, and we're paying £53.47 interest every month. But the top credit card has a smaller amount owed, a lot smaller actually, just over 3,000, yet we're still paying £42 interest. Now, that tells me that there's an extremely high interest rate on that first credit card compared to the amount of debt owed on it. And then the second one, which thankfully is the bigger debt, has a much lower interest rate relative to the amount of debt outstanding. So this kind of shows you how much interest you're paying on each amount of debt that you owe. And that is a really interesting exercise to do, because you won't have had any idea that that was the case. And this is a true fact, that these two credit cards had such different rates of interest. And we'll look at that in a bit when I show you the debt payoff plan. The closing balance here gives you an opportunity each month to look at it. So you can flick back to last month, see how much it was you owed, and then you can see that this will start to come down. It'll only start to come down though if you're paying off a bit more than your minimum balance. And again, we'll talk about that in the debt payoff plan. So initially, this debt tracker is to look at the total amount of debt owed, and it's a wake-up call for you to establish the fact that, okay, I owe this much money, I didn't realise it was quite that much. How do we go about paying it off? Okay, so now I'm going to show you a debt payoff plan. Okay, so this one is for a credit card that had a large balance outstanding on it. It was £13,500. Now, these are all made up numbers here, but it is based on a true story. So it's the figures aren't wildly wrong. They're very similar to this particular example I'm talking about. And in this particular instance, the minimum balance initially was £185. So that was quite a lot of money to be paying off every month just to pay the minimum balance. Now that barely eats into any of the capital amount that you owe. You're just really paying interest off at that stage. So not a great position to be in. What was decided, or what I decided in order to set up a debt payoff plan for this particular debt, is you need to work out how much you can afford, And in this particular instance, it was decided that £350 was going to be the amount paid off each month, which is quite far in excess of the minimum payment. So you know that if you're paying a significant amount more than the minimum payment, you are actually eating into your capital amount. You're paying off the interest plus some of the debt that you owe. So what I did was said, okay, well, if the amount owed is £13,500 and I can afford to pay £350 a month, how long is it going to take? So I just divided 350 into the total debt. This is very rough and ready. It's not a precise calculation, but it gives you a reasonably good idea as to how long it's going to take. And I calculated that it was going to take about 3.5 years to pay this off. But it would only take 3.5 years if I consistently paid off £350 every month. So I did this quick example here, and it gives you a feel for how realistic it is. So I just said, okay, well, this is the amount owing at the start. This is the interest that was paid at the start. Now, what you'll find is that as you pay off, if you pay the same amount off every month, which is what I was proposing in this plan, the interest element will start to drop. Now, roughly speaking, through experience, it only drops by sort of £1 or so a month. But I just took that as reasonable and dropped the interest charged by £1 every month. Kept going, worked out closing balances. And you'll see here that the closing balance at the end of month 1 was 13,200. By the end of month 12, it was 9,884, sorry. So that meant I paid off 3,333, which, I mean, it's an incredible amount. I mean, to start off with, it's a 5-figure number going down to a 4-figure number, and it's all shown on one sheet. So that gives you a really good idea as to what is possible as long as you can commit that £350 a month. Now, I progressed this figure through just to give a worked example. So I looked at year 2, paying off the same amount of money, reducing the interest charge by £1 every month, and looked what happened at the end of 2 years. At the end of 2 years, that original £13,500 debt became £6,100. So it's significantly less, almost half. So then we projected those figures to year 3, and by the end of year 3, still paying off that £350, we were down to 2,192, which is amazing. So I kept projecting that figure forward, and I looked at, right, where is it going to be? So by the end of month 7, it was a very small amount left to pay off. In fact, it was £189. Got it down to nil. So actually, it was 3.5 years to pay off. So that original projection of it's going to take 3.5 years was pretty correct. Now, the one thing I want to just show you, a little example, is I'm going to take another, I'm just going to whiz this round, put this one on this side, and then I'm going to take this other debt payoff plan, which is a comparison, and show you this. Now, what I want to identify, I'll show you, is this second debt here. If you remember from the first debt tracker I showed you, we had 2 debts, didn't we? We had one of 13,500, which is the one I've just showed you, and then we had another debt of 3,000, which I showed you there. And remember I said that the interest rate on the lowest amount seemed to be quite significantly higher in proportion to the debt of £13,500. So I want to show you this. So this debt for £3,000, it was actually made up of a minimum balance of £72 a month, and then it was decided to pay an additional £50 as well as the minimum balance, just to keep paying the capital off. So £125 it was decided was going to be an affordable amount to pay for this debt. The interest rate started at £42 again, which is high, and I did the same as before, reduced the interest rate by about £1 every month, but I consistently paid off £125 every month as well. And I projected forward those figures, and let's see how long it took. So I estimated that £3,000, if I paid £125 a month, would probably take about 24 months. So let's have a look. So the end of year 2, we hadn't quite paid it off. It was still 624. It actually took 2.5 years to pay off all that amount. But I want to show you this. At the bottom, I've noted the interest rates. Now, you can find these on your credit card statement, but what they craftily do is they tend to show you the monthly interest rate, which looks a lot lower than the APR rate, the annual percentage rate that you're often used to. So in years gone by, credit cards always used to just show the APR rate, and any loans used to show the APR rate, and you kind of got used to that figure because it was usually quite a high figure. And some of these credit cards and saving schemes you see advertised on the television have ridiculously high APR rates, and it's always shown in tiny print. But what I want to show you is the credit cards in these two instances, and these are real life examples. The biggest debt here, the 13,500 one, the monthly rate of interest was shown on the credit card statement as 0.4034, which looks quite low. This other one, the smaller amount outstanding, the monthly interest rate was 1.3852, which again doesn't look a big figure on the face of it. 1.3438% doesn't sound a lot, does it? Until you then convert it to the APR. Now, the APR on that higher 1.38 monthly rate converts to 17.95%, which is a much bigger figure than 1.38. The other debt I'd got, when you convert that to your APR, it's actually 4.95. So those are the figures that I prefer to compare against. So the bigger debt is paying an APR of 4.95, which is pretty low, compared to this smaller debt, which is paying an interest rate of 17.95%, so significantly higher. So why these were different is because this particular debt, the person who had it actually contacted the credit card company and looked at some offers that they were offering, and there was an offer on this particular credit card to have a much lower percentage rate over a set period of time. I think it was something like it would give you 4 years at a lower rate. But you kind of had to, I think you had to lock into that agreement, or you had to agree to do that. But it reduced the interest rate significantly in order to pay off that debt. So that's what was done. This credit card was converted to the lower rate of interest. I think what had happened initially, it was maybe a 0% interest rate originally, and then they were given the choice to change it from a 0%, either go up to the standard variable rate, which was really high, or you got an offer to do this lower rate over an extended period of time. And actually, I think that's worthwhile doing, because if you've got a really quite big debt, which this one was, then it's sensible to try and think, well, okay, what can I afford to pay each month? Let's keep the interest rate as low as possible, but let's keep it consistently being paid off. And that's what happened. And eventually that got paid off within the 3.5 years. This one also got paid off, but obviously the rate of interest was higher. So it made more sense to pay off that one a bit faster. I'm not showing that in this example, but in reality, that's probably what I would have done. I would have tried to pay that one off in a, if I had any extra money, I might have tried to pay off a lump off that one first because of the interest rate, or I might have tried to find a similar interest rate example like this, where I found a much lower APR spread over a longer period of time. So these things are really important to consider when you're doing a debt payoff plan, and the debt payoff plans are included in the budget planner at the back of the planner. So it's a really useful tool, and it's one that I used, and I promise you it does work. So it's a really good way to get your head out of the sand, look at your debts. Let's get this back again into the scheme. So you've got your debt tracker here, which shows you the summary of the debts that you owe, and then you can break it down into these 2 pages. I think I include 5 separate pages, so you can set up 5 separate debt plans and pay off those credit cards. Obviously, you need to make sure that you can afford to make those payments, and we'll talk about that when we look at the budget tracker and the overall affordability of everything. Okay, so that is step 5, which is the debt tracker and the associated debt payoff plans that go with it.